Absolutely.
So the Chiefs are the Chiefs. As usual, it feels like going into a Bears season, we don't know exactly what the Bears are. What have been, though, Matt, your early impressions about what you've been seeing, hearing, or reading about Caleb Williams and the Bears and Ben Johnson and what they should be expected to do this year?
Well, look, there's an expectation, right, that they're going to be better. Ben Johnson was the guy that everybody wanted to hire for the last couple of years, and for a little while, he had taken himself out of consideration. He wants to stay in Detroit, and then he goes to Chicago. I mean, you can't argue about the hire in the sense that he was everybody's guy. And now, look, he's in Chicago. He has Caleb Williams. Williams last year was inconsistent, but flashed, was sacked 68 times. That to me is the big thing here is Ben Johnson working with Caleb Williams. You've got to get that number cut down to like half of that. You've got to be down to 30, 35. Because how many drives, when you get sacked, those drives are typically done. Like statistically speaking, right? It either goes from 7-3 or 3-0. And so some of those are on the offensive line, which has been addressed, brand new interior. Some of which is on Caleb. He's got to get the ball out faster. He can't take that sack. That ball's just got to be out or thrown away. I expected it's going to be a learning curve. Ben Johnson's offense is pretty involved, but I also think that Johnson's offense is quarterback friendly and probably gives Caleb the best chance to succeed long term.
Did you see anything from Caleb Williams individually last year that moved you in one direction or the other from where you were on him when he first got drafted?
No, not really. Look, I expected him to be good as a rookie. Not great, good. And I thought as a rookie, he was fine. I don't think he was bad. I don't think he was great. And look, that's a really tough situation to be in. That team, after the Hail Mary in Washington, completely fell apart in every possible way. Eberflus was a dead coach walking at that point. They lost, what was it, 10 games in a row? Something like that. That team was emotionally shot after that game. And look, I will say, and I said before, I think Williams has to stop with the negative plays that he can avoid. That's got to be job number one this year. He didn't throw a ton of picks, but taking big sacks, where hey, just flip it out of bounds, throw it over some guy's head like that. Those easy throws. I was at OTAs. Now they're OTAs, right? I mean, glean what you want from them. But there were times where, in a 7-on-7 drill, hey, this guy's open. Just throw it to him. Throw it for 6-7 yards instead of trying to force it down the field and getting picked off by a linebacker. Like, now granted, that's a time to try things and to experiment. But, in a game, if it's 2nd and 10, you got a guy open in the flat for 5 yards, throw it to him. Mm-hmm. And that is, I think, the next step in his evolution.
No doubt. And that seems to be, reading between the lines of a lot of the things that Ben Johnson has said, and to a lesser degree, the offensive coordinator, Declan Doyle, is, the special. There'll always be room for the special, but let's get the simple down, which he has struggled with to some degree. Matt, I got to ask you, too, last year, I'll just say me, and I know I'm not the only one. A lot of us fell for what was around Caleb Williams last year. When Keenan Allen came in, they drafted Rome Odunze. You've got DJ Moore there. You've got Cole Kmet there. Everything seemed to be in place. I'm very tempted to say the same thing this year because the offensive line is better, because you drafted Colston Loveland, because you drafted Luther Burden, because Rome Odunze is in his second year. Isn't it ideal for Caleb Williams?
Yeah, I mean, it is, which is why, to me, that's where the pressure goes on him. There's no excuses. You brought in Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson at guard. Excuse me. You brought in Drew Dahlman in free agency at center. Thuney's an all-pro, borderline Hall of Famer. These other two guys are really good players. You better be good. You brought in a coach who is offensive-minded, who people have been trying to hire away from Detroit for years. You have weapons. DJ Moore is a better receiver than anybody on the Packers, for an example. Rome Odunze might end up being better than anybody on the Packers.
Yeah.
And defensively, they're good. There's no excuse for them to finish in the last place this year in the NFC North, as tough as the division is. Because I think, quite frankly, I think they're more talented than Green Bay. And I think when you look at Minnesota, I love Minnesota's roster, but there's a huge question mark, obviously, at quarterback. You just don't know what J.J. McCarthy is going to be. Now, look, if the Bears go out this year and they're 9-8 in a really hard division and they just miss out on the playoffs, is it disappointing? Yeah, but you could defend it. If they go 7-10 and they're in last place and Caleb Williams doesn't make a significant jump, that's a failure all the way around. They should be a borderline, if not playoff team. And if they're not that needs to be discussed as to why. Is it Johnson? Is it Williams? Is it something else? But there's no excuse for this team not to be significantly improved.
Brody and Mackloff in for Rahimi and Harris, talking with Matt Verderame of SI.com here on the show. And I agree with you that the pressure is on Caleb and on the offense, and the spotlight is there too. But it would take a lot of the pressure off if that defense could live up to the expectations that folks had for them last year when people were talking about them being a top 5, top 10 defense. That's where I'm setting the bar this year. Even though there isn't a lot of that chatter, Matt, and the spotlight isn't on them, that's what I want this defense to be. Is that realistic in your eyes?
Yeah, I think they can be a top 10 defense. They do. I mean, they've got star players on that team. Jalen Johnson's one of the best corners in the NFL. I think Jaquan Brisker, as long as he's healthy, is one of the better safeties in the league. They have excellent linebacker play with Edwards and with Edmonds. They have a $100 million edge rusher in Montez Sweat. I mean, I think Gervin Dexter's a good play. They have enough guys. There is no excuse for them not to be good defensemen. I get it. Eberflus is gone, and so you're changing over maybe some of the stylistic parts of it. But again, look, this Bears team, there's pressure for a lot of reasons. They haven't been a legitimate contender in a while. Defensively, you look at them and say there's talent there. Offensively, you look at them and say there's talent there. And also with Williams specifically, let's be real. There's a lot of pressure on him too because what the guy did behind him last year. I mean, Jaden Daniels went out and won Offensive Rookie of the Year and took a Commanders team that franchise has been a dumpster fire for 30 years, took them to the NFC Championship game. So, look, I do think the defense can be a top 10 unit. And I think offensively, there's no excuse for them not to be able to function top half of the league level. I'm not saying they're going to be Buffalo or even a Detroit or maybe even a team like a Kansas City with all the talent, but they can be a top 15 offense and improving as the year goes on.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, what we worry about with the defense is getting to the quarterback. Now, maybe Dennis Allen and his creativity and his version of the 4-3 defense will just naturally allow for there to be more pressure on the inside. But when we look at Dayo Dangbo, who has never had a double-digit sack year, Montez Sweat only one double-digit sack year, that's the concerning part, Matt.
Yeah, no, and it is. Look, the Bears, Dennis Allen's a very good coordinator. He's not a good head coach, but he's a good coordinator. He's a very good coordinator. I would expect the Bears, if there was one thing defensively that you look at and say, okay, what is it? It's okay, you need to have a secondary pass rusher who's consistent when you're not blitzing outside of Sweat. Right? Their secondary should be good. I'm not that worried about the secondary. Again, I think the linebackers are excellent. I think the big thing is if you can, as an offense, if you can erase Sweat, if you can limit him in a game, who's going to be that other guy? And if that other guy doesn't exist, do you then have to blitz a lot and sit there and say, okay, well, we're gonna put our corners on islands and we're gonna take more chances? And look, I think the Bears have the corners that you can do that at times. At the same point, I don't care who you are, it's the NFL. If you blitz and you don't get home and some guy's got 3 seconds, you got a problem. So I do think they did add some pieces, as you mentioned, in free agency. I do think there are some guys like a Dexter, who I mentioned earlier, who I think can take the next step. But yes, that is probably the piece that you look at and go, all right, if there's a game where Sweat's not rolling or he's out for a couple of weeks, is the pass rush going to be there enough that you don't have to play roulette all the time? And that's a question probably 20 teams in the league have. But the Bears are in that group.
Man, I know you said you're going to be visiting the NFC, the other NFC North teams next week. You already mentioned that you think that the Bears roster at least is more talented than Green Bay. Doesn't mean the Bears are going to win more, but how do you kind of handicap the NFC North at this point? Minnesota, Detroit, still the top dogs in this division, no doubt, or do you see it differently?
I like Minnesota a lot more than most because I just look at the Vikings and see O'Connell's a great coach and he's a great quarterbacks coach. And if they get anything out of McCarthy, that team is stacked. I mean, you look at them across the board and there's not too many weaknesses. The secondary, maybe, specifically the corners outside of Murphy, but they're pretty loaded. I am very interested in Detroit. I've been a huge Detroit guy the last couple of years. I picked them to go to the Super Bowl last year. I don't know what to think of them. Normally you lose a coordinator and you're like, all right, it's okay. But with Dan Campbell's not an offensive or defensive coordinator by trade. So losing both those coordinators and replacing them, quite honestly, with really unproven guys in those spots, that's going to be interesting. I also don't know what, Hutchinson, McNeil, they're coming off huge injuries. Like, I think Detroit takes a step back this year. I don't think all of a sudden they're going to go 9-8, but I think they could be an 11-win team instead of a 15-win team. I think they're still very good. Are they the same? No. Minnesota, the big question is McCarthy. And then, the Packers, I love LaFleur as a coach. I don't know if we completely know what Love is yet. I think he's good. I don't think he's great.
Yeah.
But you look at them and, like, who's the weapon that scares you to death on defense? I don't know. Who's the guy on their defense that you look at and go, that guy is a game wrecker? I don't know if that guy exists. Like, I've always thought Rashawn Gary was going to become that guy, but he never really has. So I think the Bears, if you're the Bears, you're going, look, we can win 10 games and we can compete with these teams because the Vikings have questions, the Lions have questions, and the Packers have questions. So tough division, great division, but I think the Bears are good enough that they can be in the mix in it.
I love it, Matt. Great stuff. Look forward to probably talking to you more this summer and throughout the season. Good luck with your tour of the NFC North, and thanks for coming on The Score, man. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
Yep, that is Matt Verderame of SI.com.